in this world of quick fixes and how to transform your life in 30 days, I feel like we forget the concept of building psychological momentum. And for most people, probably have never even heard of the concept of psychological momentum. And psychological momentum, it sounds like this crazy, complicated concept, but when I break it down for you, it's really not that difficult to understand. It's basically just, building bit by bit, brick by brick, taking it day by day. And I feel like one of the most famous, certainly the most famous for me, who people who have come up with this has been like Jordan Peterson when he comes up with the clean your room thing, right? People just they're very quick to dismiss that concept, but it's really like the foundation of how people like actually transform their lives and just how empires are built, right? Brick by brick. Anything you do, anything massive you want to do in life, it always starts with bit by bit, and you improve little bit by little bit, right? Now this has been hijacked by the concept of improve yourself little bit by little bit every day, and that sort of plants this image into people's minds where it's like success is just this linear progression, and it's not. You're gonna have days where you go down and up. It's gonna look like a flipping forex chart, like goes up, down, whatever. But the idea is that over a long period of time, when you stretch out the timeline to like 2 years, you're gonna have steady increases. And another thing you want to understand about just building momentum, and I can use social media as an example. I've over the last like 2 years, well, not this year, but last year, I built like a pretty big social media platform on TikTok and Instagram. And I can tell you, I started in like October 2021, and I was posting every single day, like 3 times a day. And until like May, I think it was, so that would be about 8 months, I had like, I think I had like I had 1K, I had 1,000 followers on Instagram. Then all of a sudden I had this 1 week where it just took off and I got to like 10K. That's within a space of a week. Right? Within the space of a week, I got 10 times the amount of followers I had within 8 months. Right? And that trend just continued, right? Like I started growing like steadily, and then there was another month where I just went up. I think, yeah, it was October, I was at 55K. And then I had this 1 week. No, it was like August to September. And I had this 1 week where I gained 100K. And it's like, all that work for all those years, or all those months for me, for all those months, just for that 1 week where I gained, and it looks so quick. It's like, oh, you get 100K in 1 week. How did you do it? How can I do it? And it's like, I worked for all those 8 months just to get that 1 week where I just gained so much, right? And it looks sort of like, oh, the other 8 months were basically wasted. But realistically, that week, all those 8 months were building up to that 1 week where I just had immense growth. But those 8 months were still very, very important. They were the most important. And the same thing goes for any kind of like success or progress you're trying to build, right? It's just you keep going, you keep pushing at it. And for those 8 months, I'd never missed a day. I didn't miss a day. I think well, there was one day I missed, but we had like load shedding, so I didn't have electricity. I couldn't post. But you get the idea. It's like you're very, very consistent, and you're not going to see progress you're going to have periods where you just hit a plateau basically, but you just keep going at it, and you'll have just so much progress. Like you'll hear it even when people will like make money, like when you get rich, it's the same kind of thing, right? It's all these years of just grinding bit by bit, and then you have just this one period where it's just exponential growth, and all of that cannot take place without momentum, right? And going back to what I was speaking about like changing your life and everything, it's that psychological momentum, right? You want to keep sort of building, you want to keep going, right? So you don't want to be like that person who's like, oh, I'm gonna change my life today, and then you go for like 3 days and then you just fall off the wagon again. You want to do it bit by bit. You want to start with the cleaning your room, and a lot of people think that's like beneath them, and I understand. You want to make like more progress than that. You can start wherever you think you should be starting. Just humble yourself. You really, really need to humble yourself, right? There's that old saying where it's like power is given to those who are willing to lower themselves to pick it up, right? And it's the same thing with your life. Like power in your life, power over yourself is given to those people who are willing to go low enough to pick it up. And it's the clean your room concept. It's like, don't think like you're too good for it, right? And I used an example in a video I made about this before, about like if you're trying to start like working out, for example, you want to get back into it. If you've fallen off the wagon, you don't want to just go back and be like, oh, I was working out 6 days a week, I was doing like 1.5 hour workouts, I'm just going to get back onto that. It's going to take you forever to do that. First of all, good luck trying to get like the motivation to start that again, because it's just such a a massive mountain. You're not jumping straight to the top. But second of all, it's going to be difficult to stay consistent because what the amount of energy and willpower and just effort that's going to require from you, it's not going to match with how much discipline you've built. Whereas that discipline, you can build it as I'm saying, like you're building that psychological momentum. If you start and you're like, okay, I haven't been working out for the last couple of months, I'm not going to start off doing 1.5 hour workouts 6 days a week like I was doing before. I'm going to have to lower my standards a bit and just do 30-minute workouts 3 days a week. I'll do that for 1 week. Then the next week I'll put it up to 4 days. And then the next week I'll put it up to 5 days. And then I'll increase the duration of the workout, for example. You build that bit by bit. It's, again, this is a concept you will see everywhere, even with success. One thing I can give, an analogy I can give for this is like those young like rappers or young athletes who they get rich like so quickly, right? And then it all comes so fast that they haven't built the discipline to keep it, that you realize like most of these people who do get rich that quickly, like 10 years after like their career or whatever it is, they're bankrupt because they haven't built the discipline necessary to handle that money, right? And it's the same thing with you. If you start trying to progress too quickly, you're not going to sustain it because you haven't built the discipline to sustain the progress you're making, right? So you want to start like brick by brick. And another concept that, well, it's the same concept, but it's a different way of looking at it, is that if you're someone who's like struggling, like you feel like you're burnt out, but you really need to push through, and this has applied like wholeheartedly to me this year. I've had like the hardest academic year I've ever had in my life, and I've been like the most burnt out I've ever been. So like just getting motivation to like study and everything has been difficult. But as test periods were coming, and I can tell you like just how I learned this over the year, I was forced to learn it. At the start of the year, I still had this go-getter mentality of like, okay, test period is coming, I got 2 weeks, so I need to get back onto it. I'm working out every day, I'm eating clean, I'm studying this amount of hours, I'm following everything to a T. And I tried that, right? This was like earlier in the year. I tried it, and I think I went for like 4 days, and then I just burnt out. I didn't even study for I didn't study that much for the rest of the period that I was supposed to be studying for my tests. And they weren't okay, but you get what I mean. Like I didn't perform the way I wanted to perform. Then the next round of tests came, and I had to humble myself, right? And this is the concept I do want to, or this is the thing I'm trying to tell you, is that if you don't humble yourself, life is going to humble you, quite simply. And that's what happened to me. Like the first time the test came around, I was like, I didn't humble myself. I knew that I was struggling with like burnout and everything, and I was like, nah, I'm just going to get right back into it. And I burnt out, and I was not effective at all in my studying. Then the second round of tests came, and again I was forced into it, right? Like I just didn't have the motivation to like start again, because I'd been doing this thing of like, oh, I fall off the wagon and then I'm back on it again, I'm gonna be perfect and everything. I've been doing this for years. I feel like we all do it, where it's like, oh, you fall off the wagon and then the time comes and you're like, okay, I'm gonna be perfect again. And this time I just didn't have the energy for it. Like I just couldn't, right? And what got me through, and this is just what's got me through this entire year in general, is that I've never had any period where I felt like, okay, I'm on top of everything right now and I'm going to be like perfect, I'm going to be following my study routine perfectly and everything. I just haven't had the energy for it. I've just been completely burnt out. But what's got me through this year has just been, okay, so I've basically said to myself, I won't leave my room until 11 a.m. 11 a.m. would have been the time that I would have planned to have left my room. I would have aimed to have woken up at like 6, well, earlier than 6:30, but be at my study desk at 6:30, study 2 hours until 8:30, take a 30-minute break, and then 9 to 11. And then from 11, my plan would have been to go and eat breakfast. So all I said to myself was like, okay, I'm struggling to wake up early, struggling to like work out and everything. I was just like, and even studying, I was just like, okay, whatever you do not leave your room until 11 a.m. Let's just keep that, because once I leave my room and I go and I eat and everything, yeah, the rest of the day just doesn't work out. So all I told myself was that until 11 a.m. you don't leave your room, right? And some days I would maybe drag myself to my desk at like 9:30. I get like an hour and a half of studying. Some days I'd only get like 45 minutes or 30 minutes, right? And that was fine. I was just like, as long as every day I do not leave my room until 11 a.m. and get some studying done before, that's fine. And that kept me going. Like those things add up, and that's the psychological momentum I'm speaking about, right? You just find something to just do something, right? Find a way to just get yourself to do something. And for me, it was just that. I lost my discipline on everything. Working out, diet, everything you can think of, I lost my discipline. But the one thing that I've stayed consistent with has been like, okay, when it's time to study or when it's like a study period, I do not leave my room until 11 a.m. at the very least, and try and get some studying done. At the worst, I'd get like 30 minutes done. Some days, like 1 or 2 days, I'd get like 15 minutes done. But you get what I mean. It's just keeping the ball rolling. Just keep going. You just keep going. Because like I said with those analogies I was giving before about like social media followers and like money and like success in general, is that the momentum builds up. It really does build up, and eventually you might find yourself at a point where now you're actually doing like everything you're supposed to be doing. And if you want to get really deep into it, you can go watch Andrew Huberman was just on Chris Williamson's podcast. I listened to that thing, and he was speaking about something called an AMCC, and it's basically like the part of your brain that's like responsible for like your discipline, right? And you're speaking about like tasks where you want to do them, where the hard tasks, those tasks you don't want to do, like you do those. If you do those, you build your AMCC, and your AMCC is just, it's what gives you like willpower to overcome like high resistance tasks, right? And that's like, you want to get into like the neuroscience of it, go watch that. They can speak about it a lot better than I can. But it's the same concept here. It's like you're just keeping the ball rolling, you're keeping it going, and as time passes, you're building that discipline, you're building it up, and then you get to a point where you're just, you're more productive than you could ever think. Or what's more likely is that you're probably going to need like, you're obviously going to need like some kind of like concerted like effort, where it's like, okay, now I need to step it up. But by that point, you would have built like this discipline. Your baseline discipline would be a lot higher, and you're able to actually do that. And that's what you want to focus on. And even if you don't get to that point, like for me this whole year, like I've finished writing exams. Well, hopefully like I've passed everything. But I've finished my main school year, and I haven't gotten to that point where I've just like everything's just smooth sailing now. But still, that concept of like, oh, I don't leave my room until 11 a.m. or whatever it is, like that's got me through the year. Like that adds up. That's got me like studying, right? I've gotten to a point where I was doing like, I got to a point where I was doing like 3.5 hours before I left my room, and I'd come back later and study as well. But like, still, you can see how quickly like that builds up. I started off with like doing like 30 minutes before I left my room, and all of a sudden that's up to like 3.5 hours. And that's the concept of psychological momentum. You can never underestimate the power of keeping the ball rolling. Just staying in the game. Whatever it is you're doing, stay in the game, right? And that applies for everything. You want to, and again, it goes back to that AMCC thing I'm speaking about. You want to wake up and feel like, okay, yesterday I made a little bit of progress, or at least I maintained the progress. And then today it's like, okay, I can just do a little bit better than that. It's like, okay, yesterday I woke up at 6 a.m. or I woke up at 7 a.m., right? I'm aiming to wake up at 6. Or it would be nice if I could wake up early so I could study. But it's like, okay, yesterday I woke up at 7 a.m. Today, even if you don't feel like, you just really don't feel like waking up, just say, okay, at least I'll wake up at 7 a.m. again today, just to keep that momentum. And then the next day, you've got sort of this logbook of like, oh, I've woken up at 7, I've woken up at 7. I can wake up maybe like 15 minutes earlier tomorrow, right? Whereas if that second day came and you were like, nah, I'm just gonna stay in until like 10, right? The next day, you've kind of lost that psychological momentum, you've lost that progress, right? And yeah, it's just very important to stay in the game. Whatever habit you're trying to build up, I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to stay in the game, especially if you're struggling to build your discipline. But yeah, make sure you subscribe to join the Self-Improvement Brotherhood, and until next time, see you boys.